Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Solon, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, writers, readers, explorers of the magical and unknown, because I know a lot of you are into fantasy. That over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Catherine, her dark alter ego, aka Lewis, my literary soulmate, and I am Ash aka Tolkien, aka a whale. I am just a whale of a person at the moment.
That's right. Pregnant
Super prego over here. And yeah. I feel like I'm having a hard time fitting through doorways. Like if I'm carrying anything, I can't fit through a doorway at all, which is very strange. And like you can't do the thing where you turn sideways, because I turn sideways and it's worse. So
like, oh no, back to the other way.
Yep, exactly. So that's been quite the adjustment.
Can you put stuff on your stomach like a table?
I officially can, yes.
Nice.
Yes, I can. Although it's like a little like weird and wobbly because the baby likes to like hang out on just one side. So my stomach will be like an uneven point. Like literally last night I took a video and sent my mom. My stomach was like, my belly button was pointing off in one direction because half of my stomach was flat and the other half was just like aggressively pointed like a lopsided volcano.
Oh my gosh.
The baby was just like, I'm hanging out over here. And I'm like, you have a whole abdomen to like, chill out.
Free reign.
Yeah, free reign, but it chooses not to. And it knows I'm talking about it right now. I can feel its little
moving
butt.
Around. Yeah. Hello, baby.
Auntie Karissa says hello.
Baby's like just constantly pushing. Baby, I think wants out so bad. And I do not blame the baby. I too would be like, okay, what now? Cramps.
Let me out.
Yeah, but anyways, I was just saying Carissa's hair is beautiful, and she was like, is my screen overexposed with the window? And maybe you guys will have a better opinion of that than I do. You can see the videos on YouTube. But I think if anything, I think I'm partial to overexposure. If anything, I mean, I don't think you're overexposed, but I probably am not the person to ask because I like it. I don't know why.
Cool.
You glow like an angel.
Thank you.
Which is ironic because of Catherine.
That's right. I am a mixed bag of things. And it really only matters, I guess, for you because probably you are the main person watching me anyway. So if it's
true, I'm your number one fan.
You, then who cares? That's right.
I'll be watching you. Even when you're sleeping. What? Anyways.
Wait, what? Moving on.
How was your week, Karissa Catherine Lewis?
Good. My grandfather is still a roller coaster of a situation. So that's fun. There was a period of like 2 days where my aunts and uncles had gone to visit him, and my grandma obviously is there all the time. And she's like, oh my gosh, he's doing so much better. He's doing great. They were like, okay. And then like my mom went in and one of my aunts went in and they were like, wow, this is not doing well. I don't know what everyone is seeing, but I think it's one of those things where my grandma is seeing him every day. So she's seeing this gradual decline. And so she's like, well, he's doing better than yesterday. So this is great. And then we haven't seen him in 7 days. And we're like, wow, this is really bad. So
makes sense.
Yeah. So that's been a roller coaster. But I mean, he's still kicking and he clearly has the will to live. So
that's impressive.
Good.
Yeah. Good for him. And stressful for everybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. But on the bright side, we talked about this in the last episode we recorded. That is a future episode, but I had a job interview, which was very exciting. And I have a follow-up interview tomorrow, which I'm very excited about.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
It's cool because like it's an editing job, like an actual editing job, which I'm psyched about. That would be like perfect. That'd be so cool. And they sent me like an editing assessment to do. And like that makes sense, right? I'm going through it and I'm like, well, this is just further reminder that stress makes me overthink things, because I was like, what is the correct version of this word? And I'm looking at analyze, like analyze with an S is not a word, but I stared at it for like 2 minutes and I was like, is that the correct word? No, it's not. It has a Z.
Yes, it does.
So there was that. And then there are all these sentences that I'm realizing also a lot of it depends on like your style guide or your standard. So like the word personnel, is that singular or plural? it really depends. You just kind of have
Yeah.
to pick one. You could say the personnel are or the personnel is, and that is correct as long as you maintain it throughout the sentence.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I wish that I could explain my rationale to you guys instead of just sending it in as is, but maybe that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So we'll see.
Yeah, that is so frustrating. Oh my goodness. But yes,
yeah.
you can definitely talk about that tomorrow in your interview some.
Yeah, definitely. And then because the episode we just recorded was all about like punctuation, and we were talking about how like, oh, Carissa's so good at grammar and she's so smart, and I'm just sitting there like, I have forgot all words, and I'm questioning my entire ability, my skill set.
What is punctuation?
But, yeah. And one of them, so like some of them are multiple choice, and it was like, what's wrong in this sentence? The verb, the punctuation, all of the above, stuff like that. And I stared at the sentence and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it, but I feel like there must be something, because I don't know, it was one of those I had answered too many C's in a row kind of thing. And I look at it and I'm like, it's missing a period. It's missing a period. So I had to be like, punctuation. And then I moved on.
Oh my goodness. That's funny.
But yeah, it was fun. And I've done this a couple times over the past couple months where I'm taking editing tests and I'm suddenly like, I know that I know what I'm doing, but in this moment, I'm brain dead.
Yes. Yeah. You question everything that you know. It is so stressful.
Yeah. So that was fun. And
yeah, sounds so fun.
Yeah. And then small funny story. So the puppies, Aurora and Luna, right? They like to eat away from their bowls. We don't know why. They like to pick the food up in their mouth, take it either to the living room or to the stairs and eat it there. And
strange.
It was so funny because yesterday the stairs are carpeted and the floor below the stair is like wood flooring. And Luna was taking over this like really large mouthful of food to the stairs. And she kind of like, Aurora jerked her and she spilled it all over the wood floor. And it just kind of gave me the vibes of, I'm going to carry all of my grocery bags in at once and then just splay them out on the table again. And she looked over at us like, what happened? I'm like, you dropped your food and I don't know why you're picking it up in the first place.
You could have avoided all of this if you just ate it out of your bowl like a normal dog.
Yeah.
That is so funny.
And they must just feed off each other too, because they both do it. And then they both eat. There are two of them, so there are two bowls, but they only eat out of the left bowl. And if there's food in the right bowl, they will paw at it until one of us comes over and dumps it into the left bowl or changes it out.
What the heck? Prima donnas.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I don't know what's going through their puppy minds, but it's not my logic. So
the left bowl is better. Are these bowls like identical?
Yeah, they're just white ceramic bowls. So who knows what's going on in their brains? I often wonder what they are thinking about, if anything. So
like there's some hardcore logic going on there, but it's like puppy logic. So to them,
there's a reason.
It's the only way to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And they look at us like we're crazy. We'll point at the right bowl. We're like, eat out of this. There's food. We'll like show them the food, and they'll be like, not computing. We need the food in the left
in the
bowl.
other bowl. So that's not edible. It's not edible unless it's in the left bowl. What
exactly? What are you
Might
even
as well
talking
just be
about?
Like rocks. What is this?
Yeah, stupid humans. So
puppies, man. I'm over it. I'm over my puppy, Ruby. No offense, but offense also.
But also offense
such
intended.
Oh my goodness. She is just fully will only listen to Javi now. And I've said that kind of jokingly before, but like really badly now.
Yeah.
I've like cursed myself by joking about it. Like she really does not listen to me. And I'm the one who trained her in all the commands that she knows that she listens to from Javi. And I'm like, what is this?
You know, look, we can fight for gender equality all we want, but the animal kingdom still recognizes males as the dominant. I'm just saying. We can protest, but it's true.
It's true almost all the time, and it makes me so angry because
you have to be.
I feed you,
right? You have to be.
I take you to the vet.
A single woman living alone or like with kids for the dog to listen to you. You have to be the only one around, because like when my parents were out of town and I was the only one around, they listened to me. But if my dad's here, they don't listen to me.
Yeah.
So,
yep. I can get her to listen to me if she's inside the house and Javi's not here.
Yeah.
If Javi is here and or we are outside, absolutely not. Nope.
It's crazy.
Dogs. Oh, she's so suspicious. I don't know. She just disappeared. Hopefully everything's fine. Javi's here somewhere. I'm going to say he's in charge of her.
I did see him creeping around in the background a couple minutes
Yes.
ago, so he is there, or
He's
someone
here.
is.
I didn't turn around right away, so I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah, no, he just got back from work. He because he called me as he was pulling up, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Recording." And he was like, "Well, now I have to carry in all this junk that you ordered. It's AKA decorations for his birthday party."
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah.
Come
I was
on.
like, what a shame. It's a really hard life that you lead, huh? Having to carry in some boxes from the car.
Rough stuff. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's rough.
my sympathy is with him.
Oh yeah, my heart bleeds for him. That's what I've been saying to myself lately, because he just has sometimes like this like middle schooler boy energy, the energy of why do I have to do the dishes? I just did the dishes yesterday. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's dirty dishes again. That's what happens.
It's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, but like like my life is so hard. Why do I don't wanna that whole energy? And I've literally just started like, I don't know what to do with that. So I've just started like walking away and being like, God, my heart bleeds for him. Like I just
What a state of mind to have to live in, you know?
yeah, just it's hard, you know? What did he ever do to deserve that, you know?
Right. Yep.
Kills
Poor
me.
guy.
Poor dude. So mistreated. Right, Ruby?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, me and Dad are mistreated. You neglect us and booze us. She doesn't know words. Hi, dummy.
She's looking at me with these cute
So, like,
little
I love
eyes.
you. I don't know what you're saying.
She has no idea. Where's Dad? Where's Dad? Go find Dad.
Well, she gave me a weird look just now. Like, I wish it was only Dad
No.
someday. That was
Let's
like
get rid of you.
Yeah, exactly. That's so weird. My little golden, you almost never look scary. You have so many little burrs in your ear today. Anyways, what else is going on in your life?
I think that's it. As far as I can remember. So yeah, how is your week?
It was decent. I'm trying to think. It is Wednesday, so we're halfway through, which is great because in my head I'm like, it's still Monday, but it's not.
That's right.
It's almost kind of like my brain's
reverse.
trying to like exactly, but I think my brain's trying to like slow down time now because every day is closer to whenever I will inevitably give birth. And I'm like still trying to get some stuff done. And I really would like baby to come. I've said this before after Javi's birthday, so we can actually throw him this party and stuff. So, and I'm taking my mom wedding dress shopping this weekend. So there's just like things that I need to do. So I'm like, I think that my brain is now trying to slow time down, which is not usually I love it when time flies. I'm like, heck yeah, on to the next thing. But yeah, so that's been an unusual experience. I'm trying to think if there's anything else interesting that's going on this week. I mean, it's already the end of Wednesday. I feel like I've just been working and doing chores. I installed my car seat, which I had done before, but I fixed it. And then I put together the other car seat, and Javi does not want to put it in the truck yet because he's like, I'm not ready to drive around with the car seat in. And I was like, all right, well, enjoy your last precious few days, you know?
What's that gonna change?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, the inevitability of it is just like, why bother? Why fight it? But yeah, but we got one of those little like car seat cameras. So instead of like the mirror you put in the back seat where you can like look and see like that the child's not like choking on something, it's a little video camera, which is really cool. So we got two of those. So I put that one in my car. Javi has still obviously not put his in his car. And the chickens are all still alive. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I feel like this has been a record. There was a dead chicken in our yard, but it wasn't one of ours. So
mysterious.
And its head was missing. So my guess is that a raccoon like stole it from across the neighbor's fence and left it on our property because raccoons are notorious for beheading their prey and then they just leave them. And then my dogs were like, new toy. And I was like, that's disgusting. Please don't do that. Yeah, super gross. But
fun facts about raccoons.
Yes, they will kill chickens for no reason. Even if they don't want to eat them, they'll just rip their heads off. It's so weird. I don't know why. because I look at
Nice.
raccoons and I'm like, oh, raccoons, I love raccoons. They're so bumbly and cute. And then like also there's the side of them that like just beheads their victims for no reason.
No, I relate. That feels, that feels like a Catherine Carissa situation.
You're
So
like, yeah, that whole dual personality scenario. I can relate
yeah,
to that.
I feel the raccoons.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, and then
yeah.
over the weekend I got to have a fully relaxing. We literally just drove like an hour outside of town and like just stayed in a hotel. And
Mm-hmm.
I took 3 naps in one day and it was amazing. And I didn't do anything. And then I got to see bats. The place where we went for dinner, the bats were coming out of the bridge right outside the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to see this huge like swarm of bats fly away and they were so cute. And then there was lightning, and now it's like a high of it was like a high of like 95 or something today, and tomorrow it's a high
Ah,
of
nice.
91. So it's like cooling down
Cool
very
weather.
quickly. It is so exciting. Everyone's like, that's
Nice.
not cool. It has been over 100 for 50 plus days for
Mm-hmm.
context, okay, when
Yeah.
this episode comes out. So the fact that we had a high of 95 was like, what?
Beautiful.
And then tomorrow's like a high of 91. And I'm like, oh my God, does that mean we're going to spend the bulk of the day in the 80s?
Yeah.
Because
Are we gonna be in the 80s again?
might as well be winter at this point
Oh
compared
my
to the
gosh.
freaking. And it's not that it was like any hotter than our summers usually are. It's just that it was more days in a row of such
Mm,
consistent heat. So
right,
I
no
don't think
breaks.
we broke like temperature records, but I do think we broke like records for how many days in a row.
Like
So it was
streaks.
that
Yeah.
hot. Yeah, for streaks. So it was a record heat wave, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the heat itself was record
Right.
breaking. But anyways, so I'm glad because I think everyone here was like just extremely depressed. We were just like, this is horrible. What a
What do
horrible
we
place
do?
to live. Who would ever want
Misery.
to live here? Yeah. So that's exciting. And I
Cool.
read 2 books over the weekend. Javi was like, "What's in this
Ooh,
bag?" And I was like, "A notebook, my computer, and 2 books." And he's like, why do you need that many books? What are you gonna do? How you think you're gonna
that
read 2
many?
books? And I
That's
was like,
literally the only number lower than 3. That's not a lot. Like
exactly.
one,
But he
two,
thought it
three.
was too much. He thought it was going to be too much for me to like read because we were only there for a day. And I was like, listen, sir, one of these books I'm already halfway through. So this
Mm.
is nothing. I will finish this one right now. And then I will finish the other one. I will
Watch
start and
me.
finish the other one tomorrow. And I did. And it was awesome. And this was including my 3 naps. So
Yeah,
it was
that's
excellent.
productive and relaxing. So
Yes, it was. And there was like a little fake fireplace in there I got to turn on. And I was like, I get to pretend that it's nice and fall. So that's been delightful.
Cool.
And then I've just been constantly cleaning when I'm home, which apparently is also part of nesting. And
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, well, it's exhausting. They're like, take it easy. And I'm like, I can't. There's sand on the floor.
That's not an option.
Not an option. Yeah. So
Nice.
anyways, I guess those are my updates. Do you have any book recs that you want to share?
I don't. I have been mostly writing, so no bookish updates. What is I think the last book I read, I don't even remember. That's sad. Was it The Elements of Style? Anyway.
Oh,
So I
was
don't
it
know, but
the If We Were Villains?
it might have been. Yes.
Hmm.
That's I think what I said last episode.
Yeah.
Chronologically for you guys. So yeah. So yeah, no book recs. What about you? What did you read?
Well, here, I'll tell this. Here's what I read, and I can actually book rec both of these.
Yay.
I read, so again, once kudos again to Riley Sager, one of my favorite thriller authors. I finished reading his book, The Only One Left, which actually just came out recently. It was very good.
Good.
Concept is this caregiver basically ends up having to she gets assigned to take care of this elderly woman who's been suspected by everyone in the community of like killing all of her family members in this like crazy mystery that happened in this mansion on the hill in the 60s, and the story takes place in the 80s. So very interesting. I was gonna say fun concept. Fun is not the right word. Very
Intriguing.
Very intriguing. Yeah, super mysterious. I mean, it has like the elements of like a historical murder mystery, which was fun, but also very much a thriller. And anyway, so I really I just heard Hobby's video game thing do something, and he's not in
Pew,
here, so I
pew,
was like, I hope Ruby didn't break something. She didn't. She just anxiety yawned at me from on top of the AC vent. That's why it's
pew.
hot in here, is because you're laying on the AC vent, Ruby.
How selfish.
So selfish, seriously. God. But anyways, so that one was great. It was excellent. I would probably give it I haven't rated a book in a while, but I'll borrow our rating system from our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club, and I will give it a rating of 3.75 pinkies up.
Okay.
Which does not sound like a super positive rating.
I was
Maybe
gonna say,
4
is
pinkies
3
up.
do you view 3 as good or neutral or bad?
I view it as a little better than neutral.
Okay.
So for me, I think 3.75 is good.
Right.
You know, like it's
like above
decent.
neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's above neutral. It's almost a 4, but not quite, because I wasn't like a 4. I'll be like, yeah, I'll definitely reread that soon. This, I was like, I don't know that I'll ever reread it.
Right.
But I really, really liked it, and everyone should read it once if they like mysteries and thrillers. The energy was very interesting. It's just, again, it's adult fiction, so I tend to not be as like obsessed with it as when I read like YA and new adult. And then my other book was also another adult thriller by I think she's British, so I always want to call her Liza Jewell. Her name is Lisa Jewell. It's spelled like Lisa, so I think it's probably pronounced Lisa. But in my head, I'm just like, Liza's more British.
Yeah.
It's probably Liza Jewell. It's Lisa Jewell, pretty sure.
Okay.
And this is one of her more recent ones, I believe, as well. And it was called, yes, it is a recent one. And it was called None of This Is True. And that was,
I have heard of that. Wait, did I hear about that from you? I don't know.
I don't know.
Did you talk about it? I've heard a bit. It may be from you, maybe from somewhere else.
I think from somewhere else. I don't think I've talked about it. Because I haven't been sure when I was going to get to it, but I got to it this last weekend and I finished it.
Cool.
And it's weird. It's like, it's interesting. The main character is a podcaster, and she basically starts interviewing this like kind of weird woman who's like, hey, you should make a podcast about me. And they're birthday twins, meaning like they're born on the same day in the same hospital. So that's how like they like connected initially.
Right.
But then like there's this whole like mystery around this woman that the podcaster's interviewing, and things aren't adding up. And it's like, and as she gets to like interview more people and meet more people in this woman's life, she's like, I don't know what's true or what's not true. And I don't think it's a spoiler. There's murder and implications of murder, and some of it's stressful because there's like hints at like spousal abuse and stuff and child abuse, but also like it's not ever explicit or graphic, so no worries on that front. That's not really Lisa Jewell's thing in my experience with her books. I've read like 3 or 4 of her other books, which is nice, but yeah, it's just so like, it was so twisty, and I'm trying to think if I predict it. You can kind of feel where it's going, but it's still unpredictable. And it was just so interesting because it basically ends up, she starts out doing this just kind of like, what's the word, like an entertainment type piece on this woman, like as a podcast, and then it basically turns into, in retrospect, it'll start doing like flashes of this podcast basically turned into a true crime podcast and was made into a Netflix documentary. And so they're doing like Netflix documentary like flashbacks sort of throughout the book. Which is crazy. So that was really interesting, especially because that's so this moment in culture. There's so many true crime podcasts, and then the true crime podcast subjects do get made into these Netflix documentaries, and I watch them and I listen to them
and I am engaged.
So I was like, I know exactly what this format is. I did kind of wonder if the way that she had written the flashbacks, like if you weren't like a part of this moment, like would you get it? I don't know. But I liked it a lot. It was, I think, more intense because it felt more like an immediate threat of a situation than this like, did this old woman kill her family or not? You know, that was more just like a mystery. It was like, is someone in danger? Yes, there was murder in that one too, like modern, quote unquote, modern day murder. But it just didn't feel as like high,
not as intense.
Yeah, just not as intense. And it wasn't supposed to, I don't think. So I'm trying to think what I would rate this one. It was really good and very intriguing, but it was stressful. I think I would give it 4 pinkies up.
Okay.
I don't not 100% sure that I'd read it again, but I might. I'm more likely to read that one again, I think, than the other one.
Right.
But this is very surprising because I do really like Lisa Jewell a lot. Like I said, I've read a lot of her books, but this is the first time, and I usually end up reading like a Riley Sager and then a Lisa Jewell, then a Riley Sager and a Lisa Jewell. Like I end up reading
associate
them.
them.
I associate them. And this is the first time ever where I've been like, I think the Lisa Jewell book comes out on top just a little bit. Usually it's Riley Sager. So anyways, those are my book recs, and I can actually recommend both of them. They're very good. And if you're like, I don't like adult fiction, I think both of these authors are like great like ways to like ease into the genre. And also like if you're not super into like really graphic violence or like graphic sex or anything, which is not my speed, nor is it Carissa's speed if you guys have been here for any length of time. Not really our vibe. We are pretty much young adult and new adulters, and pretty clean ones at that. But Ruby, could you stop that? Anyways.
She also likes clean literature.
That's true. She also appreciates clean writing. But anyway, so they're Lisa Jewell and Riley Sager are both pretty clean too for adults. Writing, like significantly clean. I'm trying to think if there's anything not. They make allusions occasionally to sex, but like nothing ever graphic or anything. So right. And even their violence is never like really graphic. So it's nice. It's a great story. It's like an adult level story, but without some of the hallmarks of adult fiction that make me not like adult fiction. Yeah.
That's the sweet spot.
It's the sweet spot. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's my very long-winded book rec. So, cool. But what about our word of the week?
Our word of the week, which I remembered. On a future episode, guys, I forgot, and we had to just spontaneously find one, but I remembered this time. Bellicose. 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 And this is warlike, hostile, or aggressive.
Ooh, I think I've heard this before.
I know, like antebellum and I don't know, just words with bell in them are usually war, which is weird. Because bell seems like a nice little
like beauty
instrument. Or that, yeah. So yeah, like a bellicose personality or a bellicose situation.
Interesting. This could be a great name. This is
kind of
Princess Bellicose.
And actually, especially if it's like a medieval.
Yes, exactly.
Princess or something.
Exactly. See, Bellicose. It could be the name of it's so funny. Our topic for today, it'd be easy to put somebody with this name in a book where you have to utilize our topic for today.
That's right.
Bellicose. I like it.
I'd
like to think that I'm bellicose, except that I wouldn't like to think that I'm bellicose. There's a side of me that is.
Yeah. Writer me is. Today I killed someone off and I was like, this fixes all the plot holes. This was an excellent choice. But in real life, I would make a totally different decision. So
you're like, in real life, I wouldn't kill anyone, probably.
Right. Probably not.
That's too funny. It's my Aries side that can be kind of like, I'm ready for battle, confrontation. And then the rest of my personality that is not like that at all, actually.
Yeah.
If I'm in the mood to fight, I'm in the mood to fight. But other than that, I'm very like peacekeeping and diplomatic. But bellicose, I like that. It also reminds me of Bellatrix, like Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yes.
So
I think that is where her name came from, because a lot of the Harry Potter names are very personality relevant. So.
Yes, they are. I think we can use this. Also, I don't think this word feels like that out of joint with the way that we speak now.
Exactly.
I think we could bring this word back. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Ruby is, for everyone's edification, eating the burrs that I just picked out of her ear. I dropped them on the ground and she's eating them right now.
Nice.
And she's going to continue to do that until she gets one that's too spiky, and then she's going to throw it up on the ground. Because that's what she does. So
yep, dogs are predictable. So
they are predictable, and she just keeps barking at me. Where's your father? Where's Dad? Go find Dad. Go find Dad. Go. She's looking at me like, oh, I know. Yeah, there she goes. See, she knows. She doesn't even know who I am. She doesn't even know my name. And Javi was like, well, why not? That's so pathetic. And I'm like, it's because you have to teach her that I'm mom. I can't just be like, I'm mom. Exactly. Like, she doesn't understand pronouns, you know? So I'd be like, where's Dad?
Me.
That's Dad. And I associate the word Dad with him. So every time he plays with her, he gives her a treat. I say something about Dad. So she's like, this word and this person go together. He doesn't do that. So I'm just nothing to her.
I'm just a person in the room.
Yeah, I'm just the one who feeds her, takes care
Yeah.
of all her needs. I'm just basically her servant, I think, is what she thinks. Or
Yeah.
her nanny. She's like, and play with me, put me to sleep. Where's my bath? What do you want? Get out of the trash can. She's like, feeds me out of the trash can. Ruby, stop. I thought I told you to go find your dad. Stop eating tissues. I'm literally prying open the dog's mouth at the moment. Go away. Girl. Ugh. I'm about to hit you with a pillow. I have a pillow right here. Anyways, sorry for that divergence once again, thanks to this dog. Where is your father, Ruby? There's literally a whole other person here. And he likes you way more than I do right now.
Not that that would be hard.
No, it's true. Oh, she just came and gave me the saddest look. I'm not falling for that.
I know you too well by now.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
it's so
trick.
heartbroken. You and your father both. Oh, my heart bleeds for you guys. Little spoiled butts. She just turned away from me.
Aw.
Anyways,
Run away.
Bellicose. I like it, and I'm having a hard time using it incorrectly. So, do we want
Use
to
it as a
move?
name.
Oh, you see,
So
it's a Bellicose, but see, I feel like that could be a name. You know, like people are
Sure.
out here like naming their kid Apple and Satchel. So I'm like,
it's a good point.
Bellicose is a better name than those.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's true.
did I ever tell you when I worked at the preschool, there was one kid, and I cannot for the life of me remember what his name actually is, but it sounded identical to me to Filofax. And so that's what in my head I was like, Filofax. That's what that kid's name is.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember what it was. It never ever stuck with me. Stop it. She just got whacked with a pillow. She probably thought was fun. That's unfortunate.
Like they'll do it again.
Yep. She's like, cool. Is this a pillow fight? Excellent. Anyways, do we want to get into our topic for today's episode?
Yes, we are going to talk. I don't really know how to describe this except to tell you about my inspiration for this episode. Sometimes when I am exercising or bored, I watch the YouTube channels How to Beat and Nerd Explains, and they basically tell you how to survive horror movies.
Oh my goodness.
And I like it for two reasons. One, because the advice is so solid and very helpful for writing, but two, also because I'm terrified of horror movies, but I do think there's a lot of good plot elements in them, and I sometimes am very impressed with the stuff because horror movies are not afraid to kill people off, and I think story-wise that's good to be exposed to and stuff. But anyway, they talk often about plot armor and how sometimes characters absolutely should not be surviving the situations they're in.
So often. I always go, no way. And I love it anyways. I mean, some of my favorite movies are The Hitman's Bodyguard and The A-Team. So I obviously don't have a problem with this. My suspension of disbelief is of epic proportions. But
that's fair.
But continue. I do think about this a lot.
Yeah. And so I guess I want this episode to be like a catch-all of like, here are some ways to make sure that you're being realistic in the way that you portray this stuff. And then we'll give you some tips on like blood loss and starvation and, what can the human body actually
withstand?
Endure. Yeah, withstand.
Yeah. It's
without dying.
And then still get up and like keep fighting is the thing too.
That's
Because
true.
like the human body can survive a lot. Like occasionally, like when I hear like real stories of real survivors, I'm like, how the hell did you survive?
Yep.
But it's not like they were like surviving and then getting up to like keep fighting like a karate battle or or they're just going out like guns blazing, like as they're actively bleeding to death. Not really a thing, I don't think. But I think it's okay to have it a little bit unrealistic, depending on the genre. If it's contemporary, no, because we're going for realism with contemporary. But like in fantasy and science fiction, I think it's okay. Or in like action or thriller, because there's an expectation that the human ability is a little bit more impressive there.
Right.
And then also you also have with fantasy and science fiction, you have tools that you can use to make it believable, like
very easy.
magic or like advanced science and like advanced medical care. So those are great because you really have like you have a built-in toolkit you can use to make to like fully suspend the belief as long as you want, pretty much as far as you want, which is wonderful. Which is like when you
Mhm.
play D&D. It's like you
Yeah.
lost an arm, but your friend healed you. So
Yeah.
you're
They
gonna
grew it back
live.
in like 2 seconds. It's fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think otherwise, like I'm thinking like action movies and like John Wick and stuff.
Mhm.
People definitely go into it wanting to see that he gets beat up and then gets back up again because it's inspiring.
Right.
And suspension of disbelief there's a middle ground. Like that's in the
Mm.
middle ground because there's no suspension of disbelief for contemporary
Right.
action, thriller, that kind of stuff. John Wick, there is a suspension of disbelief that they're better at handling pain than we are. And I
Yes.
mean, with his experience, you would think that he would be. So we're just
Right.
like, well, I wouldn't know, but I'm going to trust John Wick.
Yeah.
And
I'll,
then
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. Yeah, exactly. It makes sense to me. And you can also pull the make sense to me given that character's background thing,
Mhm.
which also helps. And then there's, of course, the height of suspension of disbelief, which is fantasy and science fiction.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a couple principles. One, like sci-fi and fantasy, I think you do need to establish as a rule what kind of things people are capable of. So
Yes.
like in my fantasy world that I've created, the magical people can withstand stuff a little better, like blood loss, like starvation, like injuries, but
Mhm.
that's established up front and then you have to kind of maintain it throughout. So it can't be like, oh, the bad guy can't maintain that level of blood loss, but the main character can, or vice versa,
Yes.
right? There
This
needs to be
drives
some
me crazy
consistency.
in movies where like the
Mhm.
main like superhero or whatever, like they get shot a bunch and they're fine. But
Yeah.
then like one punch to like
Mhm.
just like a random guard. And with each punch, these people are down and they don't get back up. And I'm like, this is a
Right.
double standard. There's no
Yeah, you
way.
have to have the same standard for all the characters,
Yes.
unless it's like someone's magical and someone's not. But again, just
Yeah.
establish that kind of stuff up front. Um, I also do think there's like so like you said, there's like the genres that are like not acceptable, middle ground, and then high suspension of disbelief. I think that's true too in like the number of things you're going to have the character survive. So like if they're
Yes.
surviving extreme blood loss, they should not also be surviving extreme cold and then like a terrible head injury and then a fall like all in a row because that's just
Yes.
that's unreasonable. You can survive a lot of stuff like once. Like I heard a story
Yeah.
once about a guy whose parachute didn't expand during skydiving and he survived. But would he then survive hypothermia? I mean, his odds are the same, but like those odds coming together is just not great.
Yeah.
So I think if you're gonna have your character survive something, it should be like one big thing that's
Mhm.
maybe amazing where we can suspend our disbelief. But over and over again, at that point, it's a pattern and you're gonna have some kind of in-world explanation for it.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you
Um,
make it a bunch of smaller things, but then you also need to
yeah.
see that their functioning is impacted by those small
Mhm.
things because small things add up. Like if I
Yes.
have a cold and I have a broken arm and I have, like a twisted ankle, like
Mhm.
every time I add a new thing, I am way less capable than I was before, even though
Yes.
individually none of those things would necessarily stop me from engaging
Mhm.
in the plot of even if my life was an action movie,
Right.
I could probably still do some stuff, but
Right.
altogether it's going to make it really hard. So you can definitely do smaller things too, but you
Mhm.
have to be realistic in the way that it affects the character's actions and their
Yeah.
abilities.
Like adrenaline definitely will numb you, but it's not going to help you walk on broken legs. So
No.
you got to be
No.
realistic about
And
that kind
there's
of thing.
also very much a timeline for how long adrenaline is going to be
Yes.
useful for you.
Yeah, and it's not you basically have to keep up the danger level. It's not like you can relax and then your adrenaline will pump back up the next time someone attacks you. Like once you go
Mhm.
down, you go down. So
Yeah, that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you get one chance at that adrenaline rush.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. I also think well, I'll talk about that at the end. Do you have anything else to say? I want to talk about like the specific things,
No,
like
go for it.
blood loss.
No, I
Okay,
could tell
so
from when you texted me that you were like, I'm ready to
yeah,
talk about people losing
I am.
blood and having hypothermia and poisoning. And,
Woo!
all of that. You're like, I want to talk graphically about the
I
specific things
do.
the human body can occasionally withstand and to what degree.
I do. You
And
guys
I'm
are
here
very
for
lucky
it.
I'm not a mad scientist because I would go mad if I was a scientist. So it's very good that God made me a writer because he knew
You're
that
like,
was going to go
thank
badly the
God I
other way.
can't do science or math.
Yeah.
I do sometimes think that when I see stuff that's like, God knew that I'd be too powerful if I could do math or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think about it sometimes and I'm like, that's true. Okay. It's true.
Yeah.
It would be. There
It
is a
is.
reason. Okay.
Hmm.
And yeah, I fully agree for you.
Yeah. it's a very good thing that I'm an English person. So anyway, let's talk about things the human body can survive. And again, with the knowledge that you can stretch much farther in sci-fi and fantasy, and you can stretch a little bit in action adventure and thrillers and that kind of stuff.
For contemporary, you can't. And if it's a really realistic thriller, you really can't stretch too much in that either. So know your genre.
So I guess I'll just do this in order. So let's talk about blood loss, which is my favorite.
She says it with a smile every time. If you guys are not watching the video of this, you need to know that from the very start of this episode, every time she said the words blood loss, she has broken into a smile.
Yeah, my characters suffer a lot of blood loss. And
why am I not surprised?
I don't know why. Blood is a certain metaphor in a lot of places, but especially in my books. So that's probably why. But also, I just feel like it's the most kind of varied. Like you can push this one a little, not too much, but you can push a little bit. So
there's like rates of blood loss, you know, and it's also something that you can feasibly recover from in perhaps a shorter amount of time. So it doesn't mean that your character has to be completely disabled for the rest of the book. It just depends on how severe it was. So there's a lot more wiggle room with that one.
Yeah. So this is my initial advice about this is when you're forming your character, you don't have to know the exact specifics. But if you know there's going to be blood loss at some point, you should know the height and weight of any characters that are going to be suffering from this, because it will depend. Because the amount of blood you can lose is about your total volume, a percentage, not a matter of like pints or anything like that. So I think it's like the average human has, is it 8 gallons of blood or is it pints? I should know this. But I think it's pints, but that seems low.
Expert.
But that's going to go up if you're like really tall. Men have more blood than women.
Gallons. I'm going to Google it.
You would think it's gallons. Google it. Do it.
I don't know.
But the general rule is that you can lose 14% of your total blood volume without really feeling any symptoms. So that's like if you're going to donate blood or like just a reasonable injury that has some blood loss. 20% is when you become hypovolemic, which is when you start to get like the chills and you can't really move or function as well. And then 40% of total volume is death. So
10 pints.
Is it 10 pints?
The average adult has around 10 pints of blood. I wonder how much the average pregnant adult has, because it's more in the
obviously that makes sense.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue. Interesting. I would think it's more than that.
Well, okay, so like if you think about that, if 10 pints is the average, giving 1 pint is 10%. So that's less than 14. So you're still good. You're not going to really suffer any side effects. Yeah, gallons is probably just otherwise you could give like a gallon of blood.
Oh, that's true.
Which no one does.
No, that's true. But you can give a pint. Yeah, that's true. This says pregnant women, because I know you guys are also curious, usually have anywhere from 30 to 50% more blood volume than women who are not pregnant, which typically equals somewhere between 0.3 to 0.4 additional gallons of blood. So I don't know how much that is in pints, but I'm like, I have testing like half a gallon extra blood, maybe.
Is it that's 8 pints in a gallon?
By the way. How many pints are in a gallon? God, don't you love that we have Google?
I do. I think it's 8 pints a gallon, but is there another measurement in between there?
Well, if I know. We just established that we're not math people. It's 8. It's 8 pints per gallon.
Woo! Okay. I know things.
Go, girl.
So yeah. Woo! So I have
like an extra 4 pints of blood somewhere in there, apparently.
In there. That's cool. So again, 14% of the total volume before bad things start to happen, 20% before you're hypovolemic and you're really starting to feel not good, and then 40% is death. So
what kind of death are we talking? Like, is this like a slow death, or this like instant, the second you lose that much blood, you're out?
I think it's so if you're bleeding out quickly, it'll be instant. But if you're bleeding out slowly, you'll just die when you don't. Because basically, you die from oxygen deprivation. I think your body isn't getting enough oxygen.
Right.
So yeah, you need at least 60% for that to be functioning at all. But this is where kind of the wiggle room comes in. So obviously, there's blood transfusions. Yes. So you shouldn't give a blood transfusion to someone who's bleeding you haven't stopped, because then it's just coming out still. But you know. How long do you have to wait to get a blood transfusion? I'm sure there's an answer to that, but the wiggle room is there. You can apply ice, apparently, to bleeding wounds. It's not just pressure, but ice will also help staunch the bleeding. So that's a good note. You can also, there have been documented cases of using coconut water as transfusions to help get your blood volume back up. And it's something about your blood cells have like sodium inside and something else outside, and coconut water is the reverse. So it kind of like evens out your blood volume, even though it can't act as the blood cells. So it's like the weight is the same or something like that.
Isn't it true that that there's if you're putting pressure on a certain type of, like on a wound on a certain type of your body, it might not help? Like, what is it? Is it supposed to be, it has to be on your abdomen, or it has to be on an extremity for that to be effective?
Maybe, I don't know. I guess, I mean, I
it's
assume
one or the other, but I don't remember which one's which.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I guess I always assumed you just staunch the bleeding whenever you can.
Yeah, well, I think you definitely staunch the bleeding, but
Yeah.
as for putting, I heard apparently that putting pressure on the wound, I forget, I'll look up which part of the body it is, which also,
Yeah.
and you know, guys don't have to get like super technical in the weeds on stuff, because
Mhm.
you're just, as we don't know, your readers will also not know. But
Yeah.
that being said, if it is an area you're interested in, like Karissa, might
Like
as well know, but don't be
Mhm.
showboaty with your knowledge, because I was
Yeah.
just thinking about, like, it's good for you to know. We talk about this a lot. It's good for you to always know a lot more about the world, the characters, the plot than your readers do. And it's
Mhm.
not so you can be a know-it-all. It's just because then the depth of your knowledge to kind of like shines through. Your readers can infer that you have it, and it makes the world feel more full and more
Mhm.
vivid and realistic. But like, for example, I was like thinking, as you were talking about, like, you can staunch the wound, and I was like, yeah, you know, I saw this thing where, you know, like the inner membrane of the eggshell, like when you, like, you know, crack like a boiled egg or something, and there's like, it's kind of like a papery film.
Mhm.
Apparently you can put that over wounds and it kind of seals them,
Huh.
which I didn't know, kind of like a bandage. And I don't know to
Yeah.
what kind of wounds or extremity of wounds this applies, or for
Right.
how long it lasts if it does work. And I was like, you know, that's really cool, but it is so niche that I'm trying to think of a place where you could fit that in,
Right.
just like as a potential method of staying alive in a book. And I think it would be hard to sell that, aka if it even, not aka, but you know, if it even if that does work, it might not even
Mhm.
work. I like read it on Pinterest, I think. But
Right.
so even if it does work, it's such niche knowledge to have
Mhm.
that it might be hard to make your readers believe that your character had that knowledge. So
Right.
you have to also kind of think of that too, like not just like what your character is capable of physically, but what would they reasonably know
to
to
do.
do. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And I think as a general principle, and I think this goes to everything we're about to talk about, it's good to know kind of the general range, right? Like 14 to 40%, and then really kind of middle it out and go for the middle of the range, because then you have wiggle room where it's believable if you're going in either extreme direction. Whereas if you start at the high extreme, like if your character is suffering like 35% blood loss, that might not be, you know, as reasonable as you think it is. Maybe you're not putting in the right symptoms, or I don't know how easy it is to recover at that point. So if you start kind of in that middle of the range that you're given for reasonable survival rates, you can, I don't know, just kind of fudge it from there, and it's still pretty believable and people can suspend their disbelief. But not necessarily if you start high. And even if you start low, like if 14% of your blood can be lost without any symptoms, then like losing a pint of blood is really not going to be that hard for most people. So keep that in mind. Are you looking something up?
I was trying to look up the if applying pressure to an abdominal wound makes a difference or not. This says if there's significant external bleeding from a chest or abdominal wound, direct pressure should be applied. If applying pressure to an open chest wound, ensure the pressure does not completely seal the wound. So I don't, that didn't really answer the question I had, but it answered a question that I should have had. So
Right.
also, if you're putting pressure on a wound and there's an object in the wound, you don't put pressure over the object, you put pressure around the object.
Yeah, and you don't take it out.
And you don't
take it out.
And that is one where everyone basically knows this, or you should know this by now. If you have, God, This drives me crazy.
Get
Like,
on
we have
your
known this forever. I'm on my
pedestal.
soapbox.
Soapbox, that's what it is.
Yeah, and my pedestal, because I look really good on a pedestal. If you have a character get stabbed with something and they take it out themselves, unless they're intentionally doing that because they want to die, don't do it. Don't have someone else do it. Don't have the character do it.
Don't have a doctor do it.
Don't have
They know not to do that.
They really know better.
Yeah.
Everyone will hate you because everybody will be screaming at you.
Yeah.
Don't take the knife out or
Mhm.
whatever it is. So, anyways, that it makes me very angry. It's like basically common knowledge at this point.
Yeah.
So, just it's going to be common knowledge for your readers, even if you're like, but it's not common knowledge for my characters. Making the common knowledge of your characters is very different from that of your readers is probably going to be an issue.
True.
So,
yeah. They need to have common sense, at least. Things that
yes.
a reasonably educated person can know.
Yeah. Yeah. That if you take the cork out of the wine bottle, the wine spills out. I mean,
crazy.
What a shock.
I cannot believe it. So another thing with that is tourniquets. A lot of times, like people in movies or books will provide, if the tourniquet is working, they might lose the limb. Yeah. Right? Because basically you're cutting off all circulation so they're not losing blood. And you're basically saying we're willing to sacrifice this limb in the pursuit of saving your life. And that means tying it really tight until it really hurts. And that also means they can't then walk on a leg that's been tourniqueted. And they're not going to use an arm. Yeah. So that's another one. And I think, again, just to kind of sum up, I think when movies do this kind of stuff, obviously, yes, it's annoying when they like pull the knife out and you're like, everyone knows not to do that. Yeah. But I do think people sometimes suspend their disbelief a little bit more when it's on TV as well, because it's going really fast and most people aren't rewinding back to figure out what happened if they miss something. Yeah. So I do think there's a certain responsibility on authors to be a little more precise and a little more correct.
I agree.
Just because people are... not that movies can't be an intelligent pursuit, but it requires a little more intellect to read a book, right?
Reading, look at the John Wick movies. If you tried to get away with that much, and I'm considering that to require a moderate level of suspension of disbelief to think that he can keep getting that injured and just keep functioning. But if we're talking in a book and that level of violence was occurring to him throughout the entire book, that's a lot harder to believe because, like you said, you can miss a lot and movies move really fast, especially the John Wick movies. Action movies in general tend to move so fast that you don't have time to like stop and think, would you really be able to do that? To like get on a motorcycle after you've been shot? Like, would you? But when you're reading a book, you absolutely have those thoughts and you have all the time in the world to have those thoughts because you can take as long as you want to read the book. So I agree. Just, it's more like you can't gloss over things like you can in movies. I was gonna say because your readers are too smart. That's kind of it, but also they just they're too aware.
Yeah, they're reading the actual words on the page instead of just seeing it play out all together. So all the little individual details are more obvious to them. Yeah. Also, real fast, I'm now getting very overexposed. I'm gonna close my curtain real fast.
Oh, go for it. You don't want to expose yourself to us?
I don't. I feel like I'm glowing a little too much. There we go. That's much better. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. Let's see. Did I go over everything?
Yeah, but if we're doing
his voice is scared me. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. He is scary. His voice is scary.
It's very deep. So yeah, I think that's all I had to say about blood loss. Basically, again, 14, 20, and 40. So 14 to 40 is where you're looking at any damage to total damage. Was that clear?
HP. Yeah. Damage to hit points. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Also, I really love the word hypovolemic, and I wish I used it more.
I could tell when you said it that you really liked it. Like the way you said it, like your voice like caressed the word. And I was like, she really likes that word.
Hypovolemic.
Hypovolemic.
Do you remember Soul Surfer, the movie about Bethany Hamilton and the shark that bit her arm off? they, in the scene, this really epic scene in this otherwise kind of cheesy movie, they're like putting her in the ambulance, and the paramedics or whoever's in an ambulance is like, she's hypovolemic, and I have never recovered from that. It's a defining moment in my vocabulary life.
Oh my
so
God. You're like, that word, it's music to my ears, which is
Yes.
the horrifying word for a horrifying thing.
I went home and I was like, what does hypovolemic mean? And I have never looked back. So
You're like, that is my new favorite word.
Yes.
And then evil scientist Catherine was like, I'm going to use
Like,
this.
there's a
from
word
now
for
on.
this.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So blood loss is cool. So yeah, and again, you don't have to do total research. I don't know how much someone bleeds from an abdominal wound versus an arm wound, but within reasonable expectation, just kind of know how much blood they might be losing so that you can kind of gauge how weak they should be.
If you know like a little step above like common sense knowledge, you're good as far as this stuff goes. Like you don't need to be like a medical expert. It can be fun to talk to medical experts and to research stuff, but you're not going to put that level of detail in anyways, because if you did, that would be silly. So,
and I think because blood loss is so dependent on like gender and height and weight and all that kind of stuff, most readers aren't aware of those exact details. So there is so much more suspension of disbelief. Whereas with some of the other things we're going to talk about, it's pretty consistent across all humans. So blood loss is like, you don't have to go into as long as you're not telling us the exact height and weight of your characters so that like someone could calculate that, people are going to be able to say, well, if they're within like 5'4" and 5'9", then this makes sense. So yeah. All right. Next, let's talk about cold and heat. Woo. All right. So cold is actually significantly worse than heat, which a lot of people don't really understand. Heat waves are far less deadly than like, losing power in the middle of winter. Yeah. I mean, it's miserable.
We had a heat wave. I mean, if a heat wave was going to kill people, all of Texas would be dead right now. And when we got those crazy winter storms and our power grid couldn't hold up, and also by the way, our power grid could have held up in a lot of better ways, but then stupid bureaucrats made weird stupid bureaucratic decisions that actually affected people. I won't get on my soapbox about that, but that is pretty par for the course, isn't it? But anyways, people actually died, and it was horrible here from the cold, and that was from like a couple days of cold weather. And the heat wave that we had for 50 plus days of over 100. I mean, I'm sure that there were some heat related deaths in Texas and, wherever the heat wave was, but not at all like what happened during the winter.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to be insensitive. Death is death. But sometimes the news, so like I'm in Arizona, it's hot here. Okay. They'll be like, this summer we had 12 heat related deaths. And I'm like, that is not a lot. Like, that's like, a really good
Arizona,
number.
That feels like we did good. And that's the thing too, is even in the heat wave, I haven't seen like news reports about like hundreds have died from heat, like there's been nothing, like no noticeable difference despite this horrible heat wave that has made us all miserable. It's weird.
Yeah. So, all that being said,
will make you miserable, and maybe it makes you get dehydrated sooner. You can get sunburn really badly, which can then turn to blisters, which can get infected. Like there's a lot of ways you can use like heat and sun exposure to weaken your character physically, but it's not at all like the damage that cold will do in the same period of time.
Mostly what that comes down to is that, so your body temperature, right, as a human is 98.6. Now, I mean, some people are a little lower, some people are a little higher, but basically you're between 98 and 99 degrees, right? The human body cannot really go too far outside that range. And so when it gets really cold, the problem is not that it's cold outside of you. The problem is that your body struggles to maintain that internal heat. And if you're hot, the problem is not that it's the external heat. It's the problem that like inside your body is getting to like essentially boiling, right?
You're boiling,
Dehydration is different than heat stroke, because dehydration is you don't have enough water. You can dehydrate in the middle of a winter. But heat stroke is where your internal core temperature is far too high. So
it's like when your phone gets too hot and it has to shut off so that it doesn't damage itself.
Like we're going to sleep
That's
now.
Heat stroke.
Exactly. So the human body, obviously we've all had fevers, I assume. So kind of 99 to 100 is when you start to get a little feverish, a little, maybe your brain isn't working as well.
Mhm.
104 degrees is dangerous. So that's kind of when
Mhm.
you want to be, on the lookout. 107.6 is deadly. So you don't want to get about, I remember my dad had bronchitis once, and as he was preparing to go, my mom was helping him get ready to go to urgent care, and I'm online and I'm like, it says that at 106 degrees your brain starts to boil, because I thought that would help. But
So
that is
helpful.
true.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, I remember my mom had
So,
between 103 and 105-degree fever after a surgery because
yeah.
she got an infection, and it was
Hmm.
terrifying
Yeah.
because little kids, like babies and little kids, they can get higher fevers, and it's 104 is still dangerous. If a little kid
Hmm.
has a fever that high, they should definitely be going to the doctor.
Right.
But it's not as dangerous for them as it is if you're an adult who gets a fever that high, because that's like you have to be in the emergency room. Like that's
Hmm.
not a negotiable anymore.
Right.
And it was like days that it was horrifying. It was
Yeah.
so terrifying
It's
because
scary, and you
the
feel
difference of a
it.
couple degrees. Yeah.
Yes. It's crazy. So obviously humidity is going to be a factor as well, but the external temperature, when you're going to start to move up to like 104 and 107, is 122 degrees. So you would think, I mean, that seems high compared to when people start complaining about heat. But basically, if it's 120 degrees outside, you sitting still being fully hydrated, you're going to be fine. Because your internal body, because that's the reason water is important, is because then
Mhm.
you sweat and you perspire and your body's keeping yourself cool. But
Yeah, you
122
self-regulate.
degrees, yeah, that's when it becomes very, very difficult for your body to produce enough sweat to cool you down.
Mhm.
Or that's my understanding. So
Yeah.
again,
Well, this is also why like infants, elderly people, and pregnant
mhm,
people are more prone to heat stroke, is because during those times of your life, you lose a lot of your body's ability to maintain your internal temperature.
yes,
So you get cold a lot faster, you get hot a lot faster, and your body just does not know what to do anymore about it.
right,
So like you'll sweat too much, or you won't sweat enough, or it won't, it's like your brain won't be accurately like measuring your body temperature at
yes,
any time. So you're
yeah,
kind of just at the whims of your environment for what you're going to
hmm,
feel like.
yes,
Which is, so that's also something I guess to keep in mind if you have like a little kid or someone who's older.
definitely. And I wonder if the reason that heat is not as damaging as cold is because your body does have natural reasons to spike a fever, because that's how you fight
Yeah.
disease. That's why you get a fever when you're sick. So
Yeah.
I wonder if that's kind of why there's a much higher range to go above
Hmm.
98.6 than there is to go below.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, those are those numbers. For cold, it's something between, I think it's like 95 degrees is when it starts to get dangerous, your internal body temperature. Um, I think 90 is when it becomes deadly and you can't recover. So I didn't write those down, but it's somewhere in 90 to 95. That's really bad for
See, that
cold.
just seems unheard of to me. Whereas like
Yeah.
104, 105-degree fever, I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, everyone gets one like once, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
This is like 90. My temperature's never been 90. Like, and
no,
good,
like,
because I'd be dead.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's, yeah. And it's totally different. It's weird too, because like the sensation and like psychologically what happens is so different. And probably also because like we are sure you can absolutely be delirious from being too hot, whether from a fever or from the heat. But
Mhm.
like what happens to you when you get too cold is
Yeah.
just like
It
you
happens
have
so
not
fast.
experienced it before unless you've had hypothermia. Like, and it's
Hmm.
so quick and it's so drastic,
Yeah.
and you do weird things, or you're more prone to doing weird things
Yep.
that you think are going to keep you warm. And then yeah, like apparently some people take off their clothes
Yeah.
because for some reason they think
They
something
think they're
about that.
warm. They
They
get
think that they're
hot.
warm. Yeah.
It's kind of like when you touch something that's so hot it feels cold. You
Yeah.
can be so cold that you feel hot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's
So,
a lot scarier. So
well,
I'm just
yeah. Well, I'm especially for me, because I don't live anywhere. I've never lived anywhere with
saying.
snow or like a lot of
You're
colds.
like, because
Like,
Arizona.
yeah.
I've never lived anywhere where it gets like dangerously cold. I lived in Oregon. It doesn't really get dangerously cold there.
Hmm.
I mean, also, I'm very blessed in the fact that when I've lived places where it gets cold, I've had access to sweaters, coats. I
Right.
can make a fire even if my heater has been broken. So
I think this is why people assume cold is not as bad, is because you can keep putting on layers. But the problem is if you don't have layers, it's like you're goner. Like it's
that's the problem.
so hard. I'm looking at these numbers now and I feel so I assume these are if you are not bundled up at all, right? So if you don't have layers and stuff. So external temperature, 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, death happens in 1 to 6 hours. So, I mean, places get 50 to 60. So that must be like if you don't have a sweater, like you're just walking around in a tank top or nothing, and you're not exercising and whatever. 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit is death in 1 to 3 hours. So 40 definitely seems cold. So that one makes sense to me. 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit is death within 30 to 90 minutes. And then anything 32 or below is death can occur in 15 to 45 minutes. And that's like even worse if you're wet, if you're, you know, like in cold water, like think of the Titanic, like those people died in like 5-10 minutes. So that's definitely like, I don't know how long you would have to be in like external temperatures is high,
like,
but
I could handle the 40 to 60 degree weather in a tank top for a few hours. I'm like, I bet I'd be fine.
Well, in a couple hours, you probably, and because like, so the range is like 1 to 6 or 1 to 3. So if you're healthy, you're probably at like the 6 or 3 hour range. Whereas if you're young or sickly, that's the 1 hour range. So you probably could survive it for like 2-3 hours, but at what cost?
Yeah, that's true. Interesting. But I do think because people are a lot less aware of that, of how extreme it is too, that you might be able to get away with more suspension of disbelief there. I think it's up to you whether you want to push that envelope or not, or you want to be more realistic with the timeline. But I do think when it comes to, you know, injuries or death from cold, you have more wiggle room for your suspension of disbelief. Because all of that was news to me. My first thought was, really? I bet I could handle it.
Right. I'm even looking at these numbers. I'm like, but 60 degrees is normal. In 6 hours, you could die just being outside in 60. But like you keep rooms in your house about 70 to 80, right? Depending on the season.
Oh my God. Who's keeping their room at 80?
I just made a range of 10
out
that's
there.
all I'm saying.
Oh my God.
But that's kind of, you know, you keep it in the 70s. So 60 is like potentially 10 to 20 degrees colder than what you are comfortable with. And that's
true.
That's
I guess during the winter storm, it was down to 40 degrees in my house. Because we were in an apartment and we had an old heating system and it broke. And I mean, and so I was sitting there with a little heater turned on and plugged in by the bed, all of the animals under the blankets with me. I was bundled up in multiple layers of clothing under multiple blankets. And I only got up very occasionally to like grab some food from the kitchen and then go back to the bed. And that was, I think it was like around 42, 43 degrees inside.
Yeah.
At that
I mean,
point.
that seems awful. So that's a lot. And like you said, you can survive this stuff, but your motor functions are going to be impacted like a lot. Your brain activity is going to be impacted, especially the longer you're exposed to that kind of stuff. So like you said, you know, you can stretch this a little bit because it does seem kind of weird that 40 degrees is going to kill you, but you should have some kind of symptoms going on so that it's not
if
like
I was outside and I didn't have access to my little personal heater I plugged in and I didn't have any kind of like protective clothing, I definitely wouldn't have made it through a day at 40 degrees outside. But in my head, I'm like, no, that's fine. It's not even freezing. But no, because
that's how I feel about blood loss. Sometimes I'm like, I could survive 50% blood loss. It's fine.
You're like, no, I'd be fine, I bet.
Definitely not. Also, a good thing to remember with colds is, and again, what do your characters know? What do your readers know? What do you know? You don't want to warm them up too fast if you're trying to recover from colds. This is also true of starvation. If you try to warm them up too fast or in certain ways, you can create tissue damage. So like you actually don't want to rub them. So like you don't want to rub your arms if you have hypothermia. You can do that if it's just like normal cold. But rubbing someone's skin if they are experiencing hypothermia can cause tissue damage. So can like using hot water bottles or heating pads, electric blankets, even fire. You want to be kind of far away from the fire and like ease your way closer. So you basically want to insulate. So like you can use your own body temperature. Like, you know, like the romantic thing where it's like, oh, come here and I will hug you and make you warm. Like that does
Yeah,
work.
towards proximity. It's so cold.
Yeah.
We have to share a sleeping bag.
You know, it's a cliche because it's true. So
It's true.
that does
I just
work.
think of the Jacob versus
That's
Edward,
yeah.
I'm hotter than you, which
Yeah.
cracks me. One of my favorite lines in a movie to this day.
Mhm. I'm
I'll
hotter than
never
you.
stop loving that scene.
Oh, Jacob. Oh, Jacob. But yeah, you know, he wasn't wrong. Although
He
he was
wasn't wrong
probably
in
too hot.
multiple ways.
He might have
But
been
yes,
too hot
that's
for her
true.
in that
That's
sense, like
true.
literally. So there's
That's
that.
actually very true, yeah.
Mhm. But yeah, the same cold and heat, the only constant is that you don't want to have extra moisture, because if you're wet and you're cold, you're gonna die faster, and if it's humid and you're hot, you're gonna die faster. So
Mhm.
that's the
Yep.
constant there.
It was when we went camping in August or July, no, in the end of July out here.
Mhm.
The heat wave had already begun. We
Yes.
went camping and my phone said what is it? It was like either 105 or 108 degrees outside, and it said with humidity feels like 111.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Like, why? Although to
It
be
will make
real,
it that much worse.
can you feel any difference between 105 and 111? Like, I
I
don't feel like
mean,
I can.
I between 105 and 108, no. But I feel
Mm,
like between 105 and 111, I feel like yes.
all
But
right,
part of it
maybe.
is because it's the 111 with the humidity.
Yeah,
Like without the humidity, it's the humidity.
it's
People are like
stifling.
it's the worse than the heat. But it is
Mhm.
because it makes you feel like you're also drowning at the same
Yeah,
time as boiling.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate
So
that freaking humidity.
that's
Also
cold
something to
and heat.
think about when you are deciding if you're going to give someone a heat injury. What are
Yes,
the humidity levels we're talking about? Okay.
exactly.
Because the tolerance is going to be a lot lower.
Gonna
Because in
change.
Arizona, the temperature is higher on average. But when I lived there, I never
Right,
felt
because
as
there's no
hot as I do
humidity.
here. Yeah. Which is actually dangerous because then you don't realize that you're dehydrated.
That is true.
Yeah. Which is why I nearly passed out on campus twice and Karissa had to
Mhm.
come save me.
I did. She's like, I'm at the mail center. Can you bring me water? And I was like, Ash, I'm on it. And I like booked it.
And I was just so shocked because I felt like I was like, oh, I've had hotter than this because it feels hotter with the humidity in Texas. But
Yeah.
yeah, I got that. And then I passed out in front of a food cart one time.
Yep.
So also on campus, which was it was awful. It's horrible. You guys,
Happens.
if you've never passed out from the heat, highly don't recommend. I recommend you stay hydrated and also listen to people who live in the place where you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
It's
And
good they know things.
I didn't look up the pass out temperature, but again, you guys can do your own research and figure that out. And like I said, start in the middle of the range. So if you're like, well, it's going to be, you know, 50 degrees out, and I said, well, let's say 55, death in 1 to 6 hours, like start at 3 hours. Don't start at 6, because then it becomes maybe unreasonable.
Mhm.
So
I
honey
think you
talked
also have
again.
to think about, yeah, I don't have to
Sorry.
write a note every time he does. I think you also have to think about like how depleted your character is when
Yeah.
they get to that point. Because
Right.
the time when I passed out in front of the food cart, I had just come from working out at the gym. So I had been drinking water, but I'd also been sweating a ton. I had not
Mhm.
yet eaten, hence why I was at the food cart, and it
Right.
was really hot outside.
Mhm.
So my body's resources were fully depleted when I
Right.
walked out into that heat. So I did not last 10 minutes in that line and I was
Mhm.
down. And 2 girls right in front of me passed out literally right before I did.
Like,
So it was
oh,
very
it's not just me.
humiliating. Yeah. Well, I was like, I literally saw them and I was like weak. And then literally a minute later, I was like, I'm going down.
Like, I'm
It's
so sorry I
horrible.
judged you. May
Yeah.
I join you on the ground here?
Exactly. But I would assume the same thing applies if you're, hypothermic. Like if you're already
Yeah.
exhausted, your body's already weak, you're already dehydrated. Like your body has less
Mhm.
resources to pull from. You also just have less like psychological stamina at that point,
Mhm.
which I do think makes a big difference. I think the body can deal with a lot more pain and even I think injury when you have like certain like psychological like strengths.
Yeah.
I do think that your mindset can impact kind of how long you last or how much you suffer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe not in all cases, but in some cases. So I think you need to think about what your character is doing as they go into this. Because kind of like, again, I keep going back to John Wick, even though for a action movie, totally acceptable suspension of disbelief. But like he's suffering more and more throughout the entire movie with no
Right.
break. So I'm
Right.
like, you should not be putting one foot in front of the other by the end of it.
Be limping or
And
something.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you can get away with that in a movie because of how fast it moves, but in a book, you can't. You can't. They can't. Your character can't keep taking hits like that without adequate time to recover.
And you have
Just
the
like when
ability
you play
to
D&D. That's
yeah,
why you do a long rest at the end of the day to
that's
replenish your
right.
HP.
Then you just all go back up as though nothing is permanently wrong. It's great.
Yep.
But yeah, I assume that's why oh no, I lost my train of thought.
Oh no.
What was I gonna say?
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. What are you saying
John
before
Wick,
that?
bodies, resources.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. I just forgot. But yeah, so cold and heat. Be aware of that. Anyway,
Yeah.
anything else? I'm moving on.
No, that's it.
Okay, so now we have, I think this is a hiker's concept. You have the 3s of survival. You ever heard about this?
I think I have.
So it's the general, again, these are averages, but it's the rule of 3s. So you can go 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. And these are all generalizations, but I find them helpful because, again, they are averages. And if you start there, going a little over or under is believable.
Yep.
So let's talk about each one. So oxygen. So 4 to 6 minutes is the upper limit unless you're trained. So like Ash, right? She does free diving. So I think 10 minutes is like doable for free divers.
If you are a professional free diver,
Yes.
if you are a professional competing free diver, 7 to 10 minutes is doable.
Yes.
And if you are not, then I would say 2 minutes 30 seconds to 4 minutes 45 seconds, maybe 5 minutes is probably if you're just like a standard free diver, someone who does breath training. Otherwise, I've noticed most people really struggle to get to like 2 minutes 30 seconds.
I would. I mean, I haven't tried, but I think I would. The world record apparently is 12 minutes.
Crazy.
So I wouldn't go with 12 minutes unless it's like a magical power or like they have some kind of breathing apparatus in like a sci-fi world or something. I mean, you could also do that with like an oxygen tank, obviously, but like truly holding your breath, not getting any oxygen. 4 to 6 minutes is when you're going to start to experience like you're going to black out basically and bad stuff is going to happen.
Yeah.
But again, think about your own limits. Like sometimes this one is really easy. You can just sit there and hold your breath and see how long you can go until it starts to get uncomfortable.
Really, really
and then like when you panic, for me, it's probably like 30 seconds to a minute. I used to be able to hold my breath much longer when I was younger because I was swimming more. So this is going to have a lot to do with how in shape your character is, how like, do they free dive? Do they have any kind of injury also? Is it cold? Is it hot? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. When it's cold,
just,
I find it a lot harder to hold my breath.
Definitely.
So when I'm in the water, which is when you need it most,
exactly.
It could be if the water is cold, and it was when I was getting my certification.
Well, there's like
hard.
I think there's a reflex that when you're cold, you gasp or something like that. So like when you enter cold water, your instinct is to gasp, so you have to fight it if you're going to hold your breath, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can definitely tell y'all about the different phases of holding your breath. I don't recommend practicing it without people near you, and also don't do it in the water without people near you ever. And if you're going to practice holding your breath, do so sitting or laying down. Just
well, because a lot of it is about your heart rate. So if you can keep your heart rate low, you can hold your breath longer because you're using less blood and less oxygen. So that,
and I feel like that's
kind
of a common sense thing too. So I think that you can also use that as a way to get some more wiggle room. But then you also have to think about, even if your character knows that, how capable are they of that? Because some people really, really struggle with that. Even scuba divers will struggle with that because the lower they keep their heart rate, the longer they can stay under because they use less oxygen from the tank. People who tend to get really panicky when they're down there tend to have to come up really, really soon because they've used up all their oxygen hyperventilating. So you kind of have to think about like your character's personality and psychological tendencies when you think about stuff that it comes to mind over matter, which is often stuff like how long can you hold your breath?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So then shelter is 3 hours. This one seems so low, but if you think this is like exposure in the middle of cold or heat or like a really harsh environment. So the internet said, unless you are wet, you've got about 3 hours. If you're wet, you have significantly less. You need to get those clothes off. You need to get somewhere warm. Like, it's not good.
My free diving ass is just gonna walk out of the water and freeze to death.
Pretty much. That I highly dependent, but again, start at 3 hours, and then whatever you kind of land on should be within reasonable range of that. So that's all I had to say about that one. Do you have any comments about shelter?
No, I'm just thinking that if someone's like more familiar, like if you have like, some like backwoods, like Alaskan survivor person, they're probably more psychologically familiar with the sensations of cold and knowing when it's dangerous than someone who's not. So they might last longer out of pure psychological strength, even if physically they're at the same strength as somebody else. Because I think the second that you give up, like psychologically, or you think I'm not going to make this out of it, like I'm not going to make it out of this or something, I do think that your health typically kind of takes like a bit of a dive. I think also which probably also has to do with adrenaline. But I think also, so it depends, like, where did your character grow up? Are they used to any kind of extreme temperatures? Is that going to maybe give them an edge over another character in this scenario, or not so much at all? And there's still very much limits to that, because the human body can only do so much, but it could make a difference between like how long one character lasts versus another.
Yeah, for sure. And think about too, like not just temperature, but sun exposure and wind exposure, and those things beat on you if you don't have any way to get out of them. So and like you said, if someone is more fit or has the better psychological outlook, maybe they last a little longer than the enemy or the main character, whoever it is. Then we have water. So like I said, dehydration is different than heat stroke. You have about 3 days, but really it's 2 to 7 days, depending on humidity, how much you're exercising. Because again, if you're walking, you're sweating, and that's losing water. So humidity, heat, health. If you start not healthy, that's not going to go well for you with the elderly, the
or
young,
pregnant.
Exactly.
As I'm literally over here like on my second enormous thing of water for the day.
I know, you're making me thirsty too. Oh.
Well, I'll just, everybody stop what you're doing right now and go get a glass of water. You know that you are dehydrated.
You know you need it.
Not dangerously dehydrated, but you know that you need to go drink some water right now.
You can drink so much water that you die of that as well, but I don't think that happens in America like ever.
Does that? Doubt that.
Well, now that I think, I guess if it happens, it would probably happen in America, but not because people are just
to it. No,
yeah,
not because people are just like, I don't know. Americans don't like water. I literally had somebody at my baby shower tell me that she hates water.
People have said that to me. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That's 70% of your body.
It's so funny. She's like, water is disgusting. And I was like, what?
It's delicious.
I've only ever heard one other person say that before. So I was like, there are more of you?
You exist? It's crazy.
Like, I feel very neutral about water unless it's cold, and then it's delicious. If it's just like lukewarm water, I feel very lukewarm about it. I'm like, keeps me alive.
This is fine.
Glad water exists.
I know I need it.
Tastes like nothing at all. So
that's true. That's why people are like, I don't like water. I'm like, it's painless. You just drink it.
It's literally painless. It's too funny. Yeah.
So 2 to 7 days, but keep in mind the desire is going to kick in real fast. If you're
so fast,
like hours, if that. I mean, I know I drink a lot of water, but I get thirsty within like an hour if I haven't had any. So
yeah, same. Well, especially since being pregnant, because before I could definitely go longer. Now, if I don't have water like every half hour, like a significant amount, I feel like I'm dying. Like, it's horrible. It's really awful.
I think it's psychological. I think your body is, because I bet in nature it takes a while to find water. So your body's like, we don't have any. We need to start looking now because we have like 2 days. And so you have that motivation of like, I need to get water now, but like you definitely have time. Unless you're already like heat exhausted or anything like that. So,
unless
but the
there's other
desire is going to
factors
kick
at
in.
play.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you've already lost a lot of blood, so you're
Mhm.
dehydrated from not having enough blood, or like you're
Yes.
trying to keep a tiny human alive in your belly
Yeah.
who's also using a lot of water and blood
That's right.
and amniotic fluid.
all the moisture.
Yeah, which I have to assume is why I've been just like, I mean, so much water cannot,
Mhm.
which is why when I went to the emergency room and the doctor suggested that I was perhaps just dehydrated, I was
Like,
like,
no.
shut your mouth, sir. You have no idea.
You have no idea how much water I'm drinking on an hourly basis.
Yeah, and it was annoying too because they put the IV in, even though I was like, I promise you I'm not dehydrated. And they didn't
Yeah.
check me for dehydration or anything. They were just like, just give her an IV. And I
Ugh.
was like annoyed because they did the whole IV thing. So I'm thinking I should be very hydrated now. And I walked out of there feeling no different because I didn't get to drink it. So psychologically, my brain was like, no, you still need to drink a bunch of water. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, scientifically, apparently I'm hydrated now. So
Yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, so that's water. Food is 3 weeks. And again, this one highly variable. Basically you'll get, and this is total starvation. So if you're eating like small things, like if you find nuts every once in a while, that's obviously going to keep you alive longer. But total starvation, you get weak in 30 to 50 days, like not being able to move weak, and then you die within 43 to 70.
Yeah.
So that's a long time. You can certainly survive a long time. And I've also heard that if you are starving and dehydrated and you find food, you should not eat until you find water because your body cannot digest it without water.
I've heard that too. It's
So
interesting.
yeah, so if you have like a cracker, don't eat the cracker unless you have something to wash it down with.
Don't eat the cracker.
Don't eat the cracker.
That sounds
and
really
yes,
awful, honestly. I know
know.
that at some point you kind of go numb to it,
You do.
but yeah, but
This is
that
how a
one
lot
is
of old people die. They die of starvation.
it's
Mhm.
just
They lose
it's
the will to eat.
weird. Yeah,
And
exactly.
also your starting weight will help you. So if you're a little on the heavier side, congratulations, you will survive starvation a lot longer than skinny people.
Yes, there's that
That's what it's for.
Yeah, it's
So
exactly. I don't know if you've seen it going around, but there's this joke about like this woman who says that she used to be like she used to like worry about her weight and struggle with it,
mhm.
but she's just accepted that she's built like the Irish peasants of the past who
Nice.
they needed to be able to survive like running from the British, you know?
Right.
So or running from the English, and so
So they packed on the pounds.
yeah, exactly. So she's like, I'm just a survivor is really what
Yeah,
it is.
obviously.
I think about that sometimes.
Yeah. This is another one of my like we're lucky Carissa's not a mad scientist things, because when I was in elementary school, for one of my science fair projects was like using milk as an insulator. And one of the questions was like, what kind of follow-up experiment would you do? And I was like, well, I would take a fat man and a skinny man and put them in the middle of the Antarctic or the desert or whatever and test how well they would insulate against cold or how fast they would starve to death. And it's a good thing I'm not actually capable of doing that. So
flawless hypothesis.
exactly.
Definitely not humane, but definitely a flawless hypothesis.
Yeah. So I mean, look, having
I like
some
how
extra
you said
weight
that
is
you
good.
could have even been like a fat mouse and a skinny mouse. You were like, no, a fat man or a skinny.
Yeah. I wrote that in a report. So
and I bet your teacher was like, well, she's not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So the skinny man's definitely
hilarious.
gonna die first. He might be able to run from danger more quickly. But he's gonna starve first. So like hedge your bets.
Pros and cons. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I do think that's why the goal should always be a healthy weight, especially I think
in the
for
middle.
women, the idea is be as skinny as possible, except for the places you want curves. And I just, that's not really hedging your bets.
No.
Like be healthy, be somewhere in the middle, and be physically fit, be strong, and don't be so skinny that you have absolutely nothing to fall back on if you're stranded in the desert without food.
Exactly. That's why like women, if women are starving, I don't know how much you guys want to know about this, but they will often stop menstruating because their body's like, we can't carry a baby. Like that's just dangerous at this point. So we're just going to cut off that
Yeah.
training, and we're going to work on keeping ourselves alive for a while.
Yeah.
Because women have to get to a certain body weight before their body's like, okay, we have some cushion. We can support a baby for a couple months without food now. We're good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. It's true.
So,
It's interesting.
yep.
Very strange.
Yeah. All right. Next one is pressure. So this goes for high altitudes, with no pressure or less pressure, and like the depths of the ocean with a lot of pressure, which terrifies me.
But yes, it is
So
terrifying.
So breathing capacity is actually going to make a big difference. If you're not breathing, you can handle much greater pressure. And I assume that's because the movement of your lungs gives the pressure too much like control, or like kind of like if you have a container and there's a leak in it, the water comes out. So if you're breathing, your body just cannot contain its own pressure. Does that make sense?
Well, I've heard that you can compress air, but you can't compress liquid, which is interesting why they say back to freediving, because I was looking up, is it safe to freedive while you're pregnant? And of course, all these experts who've never done any studies are like, we don't know, so we're going to say no, because no one wants to study it. And then these professional competing freedivers who are women are like, yes, it's fine.
It's
like,
fine.
don't push yourself, because oxygen deprivation can be dangerous for you and baby equally. But if you're just like well within your limits, it's perfectly fine. And then people were like, well, what about the pressure? Because there's, you have to contend with the oxygen deprivation, CO2 buildup, and pressure. These are like your big three enemies, when you're freediving. And they're like, the pressure is not a problem. I mean, these are professional freedivers, so they know how to stay far away from oxygen deprivation and CO2 buildup. Their tolerance is insane anyways. But as for the pressure, because baby's in fluid, it doesn't compress. Your lungs are filled with air, so you can definitely feel it compress as you go down, and you'll feel it release as you go back up, and you pass you pass through the pressure threshold again. But the stuff that's fluid in your body, it's not going to do anything apparently.
Yeah.
So anyways, I only know that because I looked it up, because I was like, can pregnant women free dive? And the scientists said no for no reason. And I trust the professional free divers. Okay. I was like,
yeah, they experienced this.
yeah, you know what? I think they're fine. And they're both like, yeah, our kids are older now. They seem fine. And I'm like, works for me.
Cool. I'll go with that.
That sounds good to me.
I read too that because humans because you can only go so far underwater before oxygen deprivation gets to you and stuff, that you're far more likely, if you're just swimming down, you're gonna like be poisoned by gases before you like crush in on yourself. Because like, I don't know, there's something about like helium starts to kill you because at that pressure it becomes deadly or something. And then you have like the nitrogen oxygen balance becomes weird. So like really you're probably not even capable of physically just swimming by yourself to a pressure that's too great, because you'll just be killed by something else first.
Maybe as a scuba diver you could get there, if you like get there, like you get all the way down there to that pressure, and then your equipment malfunctions or something, or you run out of air, or you run into an accident down there. But other than that, I definitely even free diving, I'm like, because I don't think the pressure would be the problem first, because the first thing that you're going to do when you're swimming before you ever reach that depth is you're going to pass out either from oxygen deprivation, or more likely most of us from CO2 buildup. Yeah, because most of us don't have that. That actually hits that feeling that you have where you feel like you need to take another breath when you're holding your breath. That's CO2 buildup. That is not lack of oxygen. You have way more oxygen at any given time than you think that you do. When you exhale, you are only exhaling like half of the oxygen in your lungs. You have a lot more, which is also interesting. So I don't know if this is useful for anyone's books or anything, but you might notice if you try to hold your breath for an extended period of time, or you do breath training, that your body starts to like contract. It'll like seize over and over again. And that's your body's reaction to CO2 buildup. But it feels like you're out of oxygen. You're not out of oxygen. And so they say when you start to feel those like underwater when you're doing free diving, they're like, it's very much mind over matter. So you just have to tell yourself, I have a lot more oxygen than I think that I do. And if you're just doing like basic and even advanced level like free diving depths, you have time. Even if you're at the bottom and those start, you still have time to get all the way back to the top on the oxygen in your body. But
are you Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
Go on.
Go for it.
Are you supposed to breathe out, or are you supposed to hold the breath the whole way? You know?
When you're going down.
Yeah, because like would that let out the CO2? Or
Yeah, so that's the thing. So the
okay.
instinct to release your breath underwater is because you want to let the CO2 out. So typically you wait until you're closer to the top and then you start to let it out slowly. You don't let it
Okay.
all out at once in a rush. I mean, you can, but and then when you're back at the surface, you do a couple big breaths in and out, and then you go back to like a hook breath technique, which is like you take one big deep breath in, you hold it for 2 seconds, and then you let it out really slowly for like 8 seconds or longer. I'd like to let it out beyond when I even feel like I have air left, because I want to get all of the CO2 out of my lungs. So
Interesting.
It's very interesting. But for most people, and if you are not in a scuba suit,
Yeah,
the CO2 buildup and then the oxygen deprivation is going to get you way before the pressure does.
Yep.
The pressure will also get you if you don't know how to what's the word I'm looking for? I'm tapping my nose because I can't. No, it's because I can't remember the word for it. Oh my goodness, babe, it'll work. What's it called when you're freediving and you have to like? It's like the Valsalva thing, but that's what the scuba divers do. I forgot what it's called. I can only remember.
I don't know what you're talking about, so I can't help.
What?
You have to decompress.
Yeah. You do when you decompress. It's not the word I'm looking for, but it'll do. Because of the pressure that will build up in your head. And that's why you can't, like, I think our only girl who wasn't able to get her certification for freediving was because I have to write a note to be like, was staring at husband for help that he was not able to give, but he did his best.
He tried hard.
Yeah. But it's the act of decompressing. There's 2 methods. There's the one that freedivers use, which you control in your head basically, and you're using like your tongue and your throat and your ears. And your sinuses, and then there's one that you control from your abdomen, actually from your diaphragm, and that's a different method, and it's one that scuba divers use. Okay. But anyways, so the point is, if you don't know how to do that, and or you're not capable of it, because some people really struggle with it, and or like we said before, if you already have things that are wrong with you, if you have pneumonia or a cold or even really bad allergies, like they will tell you not to dive. Do not dive if your allergies are being bad or you have a cold, because you're not going to be able to like clear your passage. You're not going to be able to decompress. Right. And you can literally, your eardrums will explode. So
fun.
Yeah. And that's just at very shallow pressure. Like the pressure will get to you if you don't know how to clear your sinuses, basically. You can do it where some people will pinch their nose, and then when you blow out and you feel your ears do that thing, that is, that's the kind that you do for freediving. There's another way where you can do it, where you can get the same effect and pop your ears using your diaphragm. That's the scuba diver way. But either way, if you cannot figure it out, because some people just really struggle to master it, or you're physically unable to for some reason, you'll be in far too much pain. You won't be able to hit your depth. So you will be in excruciating pain, and you will not make it. You will have to go back up.
You will be forced.
Just so you know, before any of the that's but long before the CO2, actually, the CO2 and oxygen deprivation, that will be the first pain if you're not able to do that. So just for if anyone was curious, it's extraordinarily painful. Yeah. It happened to me once when I did not understand how to decompress very well. And I wish I remembered the word for it, because you would recognize it as not an uncommon word. But yeah, so it hurts very, very badly. It feels like someone is stabbing you in the ears. And then I don't know what it feels like past that, because I turned around and went back up.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to solve this and just leave.
Yep.
Like a smart person.
Yeah.
So the theoretical limit I've heard is 100 atmospheres of pressure that you can handle before getting crushed. I don't know how deep that is, but apparently 300 meters is like the super extreme that someone has done. I assume free diving, but
I would assume
general, or maybe scuba diving. I don't know how long it would take to
get
to 300 meters. So, that's kind of your limit there.
And then I don't use meters. I know the rest of the world does, and it makes more sense. But listen, we still don't.
I should have translated that. I should have converted that, but I didn't.
So we're working in meters because free divers do work in meters, and you think we'd be able to, but I don't.
But alas, math. So then the low limits of pressures, like if you get too high, like Mount Everest or anything up too high, 0.47 atmospheres is where you're really going to be struggling. That's about 5,950 meters of altitude. 0.35 is impossible. You're definitely dead by then. So I don't know how high that is, but it's above probably 6,000 meters.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. So
Yeah.
yes,
So
you
pressure
plan
is
to do
there.
that with your characters.
Yeah.
Put them in high pressure situations.
But anyway.
That was funny. It was a good one, Ash. Nice work.
Good job. Good job. Okay, so the next one is death. You can survive death, which sounds strange. So within 15 seconds of death, revival is super possible and you will suffer basically no side effects. So like if someone is I don't know, if their heart stops for any reason, maybe they had a heart attack, maybe they, suffered some kind of electric shock or whatever, 15 seconds, chest compressions, bring them back within that amount of time, they're probably gonna be fine. The 4 minutes is the upper limit. 4 minutes is when your brain is going to start to take damage. So you can keep trying for about 3 to 4 minutes if you want to. I don't know what your odds are at any given point along that track. But so
I'll
like
still
if you
take the odds, I don't care.
I know if you come across a dead body and you know that they were like screaming like 2 minutes ago, like try. You know what I mean?
Why not try? Yeah.
Yeah. 10 minutes is maximum. So after 10 minutes, it's probably not helpful to try. You're going to suffer brain damage if it's like 6 minutes or 7 minutes. So you might be paralyzed or you might not be able to feel your arm or something like that. But 10 minutes is possible. And then there are some like creepy articles about bringing people back after hours. And I just feel like that's miracle level stuff. And you probably shouldn't go there unless it's sci-fi or fantasy.
Fully agree. I would say definitely avoid that unless it's sci-fi fantasy or it's a mystery and we're going to figure out how that actually makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that. Sleep, I didn't look up sleep, but I think the limit is 11 days. Is 11 days the record for someone going without sleep?
That sounds right.
And
I
think
think really weird after a couple days without sleep.
I think it takes like 48 hours, maybe even 24. Like I stayed up once for I think it was like 36 hours, literally just to see if I could do it because that's the kind of person I am. And I was just like desperate to go to sleep,
I stayed up for
within
24 hours once, and it was like physically a painful experience.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. You're just time moves so slowly, so it's like you can't even just like distract yourself through it. It's just awful. And I do think there is you start to hallucinate. I think after 24 hours, you start to like you can't recall words and you can't like you bump into stuff, your balance is off. But I think you're likely to pass out probably at 3 days or so. And 11 days is like if you are doing stuff to keep yourself awake, like caffeine and pain and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Which is why I guess they probably use that as a torture method. Because it's so awful.
Being kept awake beyond when your body should feasibly be awake feels like torture because it physically is torture.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, so if your character needs to be awake for long periods of time, recognize that after 24 hours, stuff's going to start to happen. Like things are going to go wrong in their minds and their bodies and everything. So I think you get more emotional.
Yes, you get progressively more unhinged.
Yeah,
like
you're likely to like I mean there are horror movies where this happens where like people have been sleep deprived for days and like someone walks up to them and they accidentally kill them just because they're so on edge and they don't know how to determine a threat from a friend. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, yeah. So then falls. These are just kind of some rapid fire ones. Falls fatal at 8 stories. I think a story is 14 feet. That's what I've heard. So do that math. I think
but also people die
90.
falling off 10-foot ladders all the time.
Yes. It depends on what you land on, like what part of your body, and then what kind of material you land on, your physical health, again, all that kind of stuff. Obviously falling on your neck, significantly worse than falling on your leg. So if you can twist in midair. I feel like I'm giving you guys advice on how to survive stuff, but I mean the characters.
Yes.
I mean,
And I can tell you this too, from when I did high falls and stunts, you want to be as relaxed as possible when you hit
mhm,
whatever you're about to hit. The only part of your body you want to be controlling at all is you want your basically you want your head and your neck to be like kind of like curled into your body a little bit. But
yes.
the rest of your body, if you can smack with your arms first, your arms first, like it'll kind of like take a little bit of the initial impact, which, if you're falling from a great height, you'd rather just break your arms and your spine, so you
Right.
can try and like smack when you fall. But if you don't feel like you can do that, just go limp as a noodle. If you can just be
Yep.
limp, you will
Just
suffer
ragdoll it.
way less injury. Yeah, just
Yeah.
ragdoll it. But of course, not all of your characters will know that. And also, if this is
Mhm.
like a moment of action, they're probably not going to be thinking about it and be too tense
Yeah.
for that. But if they have experience in their background or something where they would know that, or they've,
Yeah.
been pushed out a window before,
Yeah,
then
exactly.
maybe they have a better shot. I don't know.
Definitely. And I in the movies they always like fall on car hoods and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That's really only going to help if it crushes in. So
Yeah.
like if you land on something that gives you
Any
what's the
kind of
word?
cushion.
Yeah, cushion. If you have any kind of flexibility there, you are more likely to survive.
Mhm.
That's true too if you fall into water. Like people think falling into water is relatively safe. It's not. If you hit
Mm-mm.
that at the right angle, it's going to
Like
crush your
hitting
spine too.
concrete. Yeah.
Yes. So I mean that again, this one has an enormous range. You can probably make a lot of things believable. Like I said, I
True.
heard that story about the skydiver who managed to survive that fall. I mean, I think he was not paralyzed, so I don't know if he broke his spine, but you certainly can survive tremendous falls, but basically anything 8 stories or above, you're not going to survive. And in between there, like 8 to, I don't know, 5 feet, there's some wiggle room about what you want to do there.
It fully depends on the
Yeah.
circumstances. You definitely have a lot of room to work with
Mhm.
that.
Definitely. And then lightning, you can survive being struck by lightning.
Mhm.
Best if it does not hit your heart, or if it does hit your heart and someone immediately gives you CPR, you can survive lightning.
Yeah.
So that's also really useful.
Mhm.
There's a doctor on YouTube. I'm gonna forget his name, but his like catchphrase is chest compressions, chest compressions, chest compressions. And he's like, if the heart is stopped, just do it. Like, don't worry about anything else. That's gonna be the best thing. Don't like worry about mouth to mouth. Just give chest compressions.
Yep.
So that's gonna solve a lot of things.
Yep.
And then brief note on head traumas. When they are really extreme, I don't know how to measure that. How do you measure a head trauma? But about 50% of them are fatal. So 50-50. Your character probably shouldn't be surviving head trauma after head trauma,
Mm-mm.
but they can definitely survive 1 or 2.
Yes. Also, head wounds bleed a lot, so
Yeah.
they look serious even when they're not serious, but
Mhm.
typically head wounds look nasty. And then also if you're talking about like multiple head injuries, even if it's not in the same book, this is why they discovered I want to say it was like in the maybe like 90s, it could have been like the early 2000s, football players, like retired football players were having a lot of like neurological issues, and they
Mhm.
discovered it was from repeated impacts. So it's
Right.
from repeat concussions, and it is not hard to get a concussion, y'all.
Right.
So if you are in a field or you play a sport where it's more common to get concussions, like you want to keep an eye on that. That's why the football helmets that they use now are so different than they used to, and they have to pass a lot of really strict protocol. Same for motorcycle helmets, which is why if you
Mhm.
ride a motorcycle, get a DOT approved helmet. God, get a DOT approved helmet, not the ones that look cool. I don't care if you look stupid. Because
Being alive is better than being cool. That's all I'm
being
saying.
alive is better than being cool, because not only can you die from a single head injury.
That's not true.
What's not true?
Being cool is way better.
Being cool is way better, apparently. That's
Totally
how
what he would say.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
an idiot.
I know.
Go
So
on.
dumb. Ugh. Yeah, you can die from a single head injury. Even if you can also have just permanent neurological effects now, unfortunately, from a single head injury. And if not from a single one, if you get multiple concussions, I think this is also why a lot of the mortar boys, they get concussed constantly from the artillery going off. So I'm just hoping. I mean, here's the thing is like, it is a well-known fact that a lot of our veterans have mental health struggles after service, and I do think that a lot of that can be attributed to stuff like repeat concussions, because even if they're not working with artillery, it's army stuff, it's military in general, it's rough, it's loud, so even tiny little concussions repeated can have a really, really big impact and can permanently affect the way that you function. So yeah, just keep that in mind, because that drives me crazy. Whenever I watch football, I think, God, I hope my kid doesn't play football.
Yeah.
Then the same guy, who was it who was getting sacked over and over again? Daniel Jones.
Plays for the Giants.
He plays for the Giants. We were watching football the other day, and I don't know the Giants at all.
But
I
what a
only know
good
the
reference,
Cowboys a little.
Ash. You sound
Thank
like you know about
you.
sports.
I sound like I know about sports. I just remember Kazabi was like, oh, he just keeps getting hit, and he just kept going. But I was also like, I'm so impressed, but also I'm so scared for you and your future family, because then things come out later and the family notices like personality changes is like a really big sign. People tend to get irritated a lot faster. Their functioning decreases in certain ways, and you don't know until the damage is done.
Yeah.
So, and any concussion could be the last concussion before the symptoms start. So please, please stop giving your characters repeat head trauma unless
With
you're
no
doing it because
consequences.
with no consequences. If your character suffers repeat head trauma, there will be consequences. It's the head. It's the most
very
important
important.
part. Okay. So be cautious with the head trauma. It does not take much to get a concussion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And just in general, when you're writing stuff, like look up how long it takes bones to heal and scars to form.
Yes.
That's going to depend on, well, bones is going to depend on the part of the body. Scars, I think. I just didn't look it up. So sorry.
Well, there's different types of scars too. Like, so this is from Stage Makeup Days. Is like there's colloid scars, a different type. There's raised scars, there's flat scars, and it depends. There's straight scars, and then there's like the ridged scars. It just completely depends. But definitely, like I would look that up. I mean, I feel like it's not too hard to look that up. So
right, it's probably pretty simple. And then like with all the stuff we mentioned, like starvation and cold and that kind of stuff, look up the symptoms. I don't think you have to like go in stages super specifically. I'm sure it happens in stages. Like the beginning stages of hypothermia are different than the end. I don't know, if you just have it in a generally good order, I don't think people are going to be nitpicky about those specific details.
No.
But just make sure that it is in fact reasonably cold enough for hypothermia to set in or starvation to set in, like you've gone long enough without food, but not, so cold or so long that it now becomes unreasonable. And like I've said a ton of times, stick to the middle of the range. So that you have some wiggle room for yourself. And also you can go vague. If all else fails, you don't have to describe the exact injury. You don't have to describe the exact amount of blood that someone has lost or how long they've been dead. Just know these are the reasonable ranges so that, you don't have a dead body for 4 hours and then it comes back, or have, starvation for 2 days and somehow the person has died of it. You just need to be within a certain, non-distinct range.
To me, this is like the comparison between like a true crime show like Castle and or even Psych and a true crime show like SVU. They could be talking about the exact same injuries, but the level of depth they go into is so different.
Yes.
And in a book, I would steer to the less graphic side, because A, it appeals to more people, and then B, if you do have somebody who's reading and they know, and they actually do know the subject, and you get anything wrong, they'll know. So it's so much safer to just go vague. If you want to know more for you because you want to feel like you can back up the choice that you made, then absolutely. But you don't need to include those details. I do not recommend including the details.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point too. Most of your readers probably aren't going to care about the specifics. They just want to know, like, are they okay? And what's going on mentally? And like, what are their thoughts and that kind of stuff. There are going to be people reading it that will be experts on it. I think that's just a law of numbers. You're going to have, some people that know. So I do think it's relatively important to make sure that they are not sitting there screaming, saying, this is so unrealistic, I hate this. But give them like that range where even the expert can say, unlikely, but okay.
Close enough.
Yeah. Good effort. I can suspend my disbelief, even though I'm a doctor and I know, or I'm a hiker and I know, and all that kind of stuff. And then also, just because talking generally, I think I originally intended to call this, did I say it's about plot armor? That you don't want your characters to have too much plot armor. So just kind of on that theme, if everyone is suffering injuries, and your main character is not, they probably should be suffering something, because otherwise it's just really unreasonable that they are safe when everyone else is, unless you have an explanation for that. Maybe the bad guys aren't attacking them for a reason, or maybe there is something about them that is special, that they're, you know, predicting these attacks or able to withstand them.
And does your main character feel guilty about that if they're the only one who's not hurt? Because probably they should. And
there's probably a burden on them to help all of the people that are hurt. So that's going to play out too. But yeah, it's unrealistic if, you know, everyone has hypothermia except for the main character. You need to have a reason for that. That otherwise unreasonable. And I also think it can be useful if you're thinking about these ranges to go under instead of over for effect. So like a big deal is, you know, oh, they held their breath for like, you know, 6 minutes or whatever. That's so impressive. What if they die after 30 seconds because they panic and, you know, inhale water or, you know, can't find oxygen or whatever. That if you're gonna, you know, kill off a character or even nearly kill them off, maybe go for the under value of the range, because readers feel like, oh, okay, we have this wiggle room, but you're like, nope, we don't have that wiggle room. We're going to kill them off way faster than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if they die and it's, sorry, I was just going to say, if they die and it's been 15 seconds, maybe they don't necessarily come back, even though that's technically possible. Or if they get struck by lightning, maybe they don't come back, even though it's technically possible, right? You don't have to go for these extreme suspension of disbelief things, staying in that range of like, well, most people would die of this, or it's perfectly reasonable that someone dies of this, to kind of shock your readers in that way, I think can be kind of a different way to approach that.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes real life accidents so tragic, is because it's often something like that. Like somebody like fell into the water after hitting their head and they were disoriented. Or I just found out that someone we know has this condition in her inner ear where when she's underwater, she cannot, like if her feet aren't touching ground, she cannot tell which way is up. So she will literally just keep swimming down. So like whether it's something like someone's disoriented, or it's an accident that happens really suddenly, or they simply don't have the psychological or physical stamina to last as long as an average person, like it's sad, it's tragic. That's actually what makes it feel even more tragic, but that stuff happens all the time. So you don't have to push the boundaries at all. You can definitely go for the lower limits, or even like be like, wow, I would have survived that, or surely people could survive that, because look it up and I promise you someone's died from it.
Someone has it,
which is sad. But that also adds to the shock factor if that's important to you for a character's passing, if it's important that characters be shocked and or it be extra tragic. I think that is much more of an effective way to do that, and also completely realistic, unfortunately.
Yeah. And if you're doing that simultaneously with some characters really withstanding stuff that's kind of at the high end of believable, those become more believable because you're kind of willing to sacrifice the people over here on, you know, the altar of suspension of disbelief. And it's also important to remember.
Is enjoying this episode.
I am. There are a lot of, you know, injuries and things that you seem to survive and then you don't. So like you can actually drown even after you have come up out of the water and have recovered. Your body can still just say, nope, we're shutting down. That was too long without oxygen. And you can die a couple hours later. Head injuries, you can have a head injury and then go to sleep a couple hours later and you never wake up. Same with blood loss. You can seem to be recovering after the transfusion or whatever kind of treatment you're getting, and then you still die. So that can be a good way too, to make the readers feel like, okay, well, this person's safe, we're good. And then, oh no, they're not. And
not to scare people about head injuries, but that's actually pretty notorious for head injuries because they can be really hard. If there's no visible blood, they can be really hard to identify in the emergency room. So then they often get sent home and they have like an internal bleed or something. So very, very sad. Yep. That's depressing.
I know. I mean, but also kind of fun for me. So
you're like, I have no regrets.
Yeah, that was all I had to say. I think it's important as a writer that you are a little more accurate than anything on TV, just because there is that added element of the specific words that are being read instead of the accumulation of them on a screen. So just and again, no more than your readers. That's totally reasonable. And keep in mind what your characters wouldn't know.
Yes. So absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have any
Cool.
writing updates?
Yes, I've been writing a lot. I don't have anything super exciting. I'm just writing, and I killed off a character today. So
Oh, is that
that
what
was cool.
inspired this topic?
Yes. Yeah. I wasn't going to kill her off, but I'm like, you know what? This other character needs a catalyst to just like go totally insane. So
You're like, I
someone's got
know
to
just
die.
what to do.
I know how to do that.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
but yeah, it's so I'm writing that time loop story idea that I talked about last week or last
Mhm.
episode, and it's like really hard. I'm not gonna lie. I have a list already of almost a page of notes of things I need to go back and foreshadow better.
Mhm.
So I think it'll be a little more intense of an initial edit after the fact. I just feel like I need to know what the ending is concretely before I can actually write the
Mhm.
beginning well, which is to be
Yeah.
expected. That makes sense given the
Yeah.
type of book. So
Given that it's a time loop.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I'm about halfway through, I think, and I know how it's going to end now. And I've decided because I was thinking, I was like, it's from the perspective of the person that is not aware of the time loop, right? So I'm like, okay, are they gonna like loop around again and then they're gonna have forgotten everything from that day? Are they gonna remember it somehow? Is that just gonna be the last day of the loop? Like, what's
Mhm.
going on there? So I finally decided on something, and I'm really excited about it. So
Oh, I just cannot wait to read this book. It
yeah.
sounds so trippy. I do not feel that I have the IQ to write a book like this, but I'm so glad that you do.
Thank you. I'm excited. I don't think it's as intelligent as you are assuming it is. It's mostly, I mean, it's magic. It's a fantasy book. So there's a lot of cutting corners in that sense. But
Well, thank God, because
yeah.
otherwise I probably could not comprehend it. I have such a hard time with time travel and time loops. Like I will get so in my head trying to figure it out, and I end up
Yeah.
always way more confused than I started. It makes absolutely no sense to me at all. When people are like, "If would you want like a superpower? Like, would you want to time travel?" I'm like, "No, that's
That's
confusing.
terrifying
That's very
or confusing.
confusing."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. No
yeah.
thanks.
But that's all. I mean,
Mm.
it's been fun for me, but nothing really to update you
But
guys on
nothing,
except
yeah,
from it's
earth
happening.
shattering.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
My only update is the same one that you guys are going to hear sometime in the future in one of the pre-recorded episodes while I'm on maternity leave. But it is accurate to my current life, which is that I did in fact meet the goal the last time that I talked to you guys, that you guys actually heard me in real time. I did meet the goal that I set. I have 5 chapters approximately of my book, and I should have more by now, but I don't. But I'm still on track, I think, to finish this book by the end of the year. So
Cool.
that's my update. I'm excited about it. I think I told you guys already, but in case I didn't, I did name the armadillo Oswald. He goes by Ozzy,
Yeah.
and he's adorable. So I have absolutely no regrets about including him in the story. Thank you very much.
And I don't think you should. He sounds incredible already. So
He is incredible. So he's basically the main character.
yeah.
I
He
mean,
takes over. Like, what else was I supposed to do?
this is Ozzy's book now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, that's pretty much my only writing update.
Yeah, cool.
Is there anything else that you want to share with the peeps?
Nope.
No. All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, if you too enjoyed how can I quote this? Sacrificing something on the altar of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
If you
Sacrificing your characters on the altar
your
of suspension
characters,
disbelief.
yes. If you too think that sounds like a great time, you know what, Karissa, Catherine is happy to have you here. I'm frightened to have you here, but I'm also glad to have you here. No more
You don't
frightened
quite
than I
want to be
usually am.
outnumbered by people like that, but
No,
you're welcome in small numbers.
yeah, you're welcome in small numbers. Just let's keep those numbers small, maybe. But if that is the case, then go ahead and leave 5 stars specifically for Catherine. She'll know if you don't. That would be wonderful. But for real, if you guys wouldn't mind sharing the podcast with your writer friends, you have some. I know that you don't talk to them because we're all introverts, but this is your moment to really quickly message them and then delete your Facebook account from embarrassment that that you have found this great new podcast, or if you've been here for a while, whatever. Just because we want to hear what you guys are thinking. We want to hear what you guys are writing about. If there's a topic you want us to cover, you guys can always message us on social media or email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. We are on Instagram and TikTok. We are the Scripturient Society. Lots of fun content there to keep you guys motivated with all of your writing projects during the week and also to make you giggle. That's the Karissa side, not the Catherine side. Well, some of the humor can be dark. You'll know if it's Catherine. And in exciting news, our graphic designer, aka my sister, who I actually think is going to join us for our 100th episode, which is coming up and very exciting. She is currently designing some merch for us. So we do currently have merch on our website if you guys are interested. It's at storysirenstudio.com or the Scripturient Society.com. It'll take you to the same place. So if you guys want to support us, merch is a great way to do that. It's also just really fun to see people wearing these inside jokes. But we're about to add a new very funny inside joke. Hint, and this will, I guess, show how much you've listened to of the show. But it's about tomatoes and doing right by your tomatoes. So regardless, I like to think that it's a funny enough topic that I would wear it with no context.
Yeah.
And I basically am, because I don't remember the specific conversation that led to that. I will refresh myself in time. But for now, I'm just like, I'm sure that was very smart of us and very funny. So some Do Right by Your Tomatoes merch is definitely en route and very exciting. So I think that's everything that we have for you guys. Don't forget to message us and tell us what you're reading, what you're writing. And if you want to join our writers group, you can do so at the Discord link in our episode description. It's not super consistently used at this point, but that's just because we don't have a lot of people who are really interested in using it, but we would love to. So if that sounds like fun, you guys want to build a writers group, let's do it. And that's everything that I've got. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.